to the Gabe and Jude podcast. Today we were diving into 3 topics from Timothy Snyder's text on tyranny. We will be picking the case study from the year, World War II, and we will be applying the beliefs and views from Snyder's text on tyranny to World War II. Specifically, the U.S.'s decision to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, why it was wrong, what motivated them, just diving into all of that. And we'll be talking about current day and relating the U.S.'s decisions back then to today. We will be covering the 3 topics: investigate, remember professional ethics, and learn from peers in other countries. Because we thought that this translated best to all of our evidence and translated best to the U.S.'s decision to drop the bombs in World War II. Gabe will start reading Investigate Part 1. I will be reading Investigate Part 2. Investigate Part 1 is explaining why the decision to drop the bombs was horrible, why they shouldn't have, dropped them in the first place, and how Japan has surrendered before. Hate to spoil it for you. But now, before we start, time for a 30-minute commercial on Michigan football's national championship run. So enjoy it. Wait, never mind. Actually, we had some technical difficulties. Anyway, Gabe's going to start with Investigate Part 1. He's going to lay down some intellectual thoughts for you. So,
I'm talking about number 11 on tyranny, which is investigate and why U.S. should not have dropped the bomb. Now, Japan could have surrendered before the bomb drop. And this topic tells you to figure out things for yourself. Spend time exploring, new ideas and beliefs around you, and to realize that the government doesn't always say things that are true, and you should take responsibility for what you communicate to others and what, the ideas that you have yourself. And in World War II, it seemed to the American public that dropping the bombs was the only option to prevent more bloodshed and prevent a U.S. invasion of Japan, to prevent, more issues from going on in the war. And with a little bit of research and a bird's eye view on the situation with Japan, we have seen that, number one, Japan had no military air force to fight the U.S., so there was no reason to even attack them again. And number 2, U.S. had control of their ports, where they could have starved them out. Number 3, that U.S. could have just demonstrated atomic bombs power offshore, still scaring the Japanese and warning that they will do it to a honest city if they don't surrender. And number 4, that the U.S. could have surrendered before the bomb drops if they had let Japan keep the emperor sooner, which is what they ended up doing anyway. An investigation could have prompted social action against the bomb drops and pushing the president not to use the bombs on land in Japan so he could keep his power and status. And by investigating stuff, you can figure out, well, is the government really being truthful to me? Is this really what the situation is? And all these things. And back then, they really had no idea what was going on because they had just been listening to propaganda around them, which, caused this bomb drop in the first place.
Which also relates to, investigate, pay attention to, the information you're getting fed through the internet and all that stuff. Obviously, we didn't have the internet back then, but it applies to now, at least, through this information you get fed and the stuff you look at. Anyways, sorry for interrupting you.
That's all right. Do you have any questions for me, Jude?
I'm just thinking about, since this is a very important topic and, this is a very big chunk of our exploration on Timothy Snyder's text and the tyranny and all that stuff. I think this is probably our favorite topic for exploring World War II. How do you think this topic of investigation and this topic of, exploring the, and the knowing what you're being fed and the information, all the propaganda and stuff, how do you think this investigation topic relates to a different case study we explored or a different case here? How does this relate the best?
Well, dude, that's a good question. And I think it applies really well to Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. And, we all know that, people in Nazi Germany were normal people, right? They were people just like anyone else. But the fact of the matter is they've been fed years of propaganda and all these things. And if these people had been taught to investigate, obviously it's very difficult to have a society investigate things if they've been fed, don't investigate, don't be intelligent, just be some militaristic, unintelligent society that focus on strength and military and all these things. They didn't want to investigate and they didn't need to because they didn't think they were getting lied to because they love their country. But I think investigation, even on a small scale, one person, this could have helped Nazi Germany, especially when it was getting its first roots because I think investigation can help people understand, hey, maybe I'm getting lied to. Maybe these people aren't that bad. Especially, the racism in Nazi Germany.
That's a very hard thing to do when you're being fed it for just years.
Yeah, because they had been fed like anti-Jewish propaganda all the time. Mm-hmm. So I think by investing, maybe even like a few people, when it was like gaining its roots, I think it'd be much more difficult whenever, in its like peak, whenever it was like everyone was like in war and all these things. Like you can't really gain traction then. But I think in the beginning, if they had investigated stuff, and if they had been like, okay, maybe we're wrong about this, maybe we can slow down a bit. If there came another leader who had the gall, the strength to come up and be like, hey, this isn't right, possibly wouldn't have Nazi Germany, because I think investigation, could have prevented that, because it could have started some social action there.
So not only does this translate very well to our, talking about the U.S. bombing Japan and how, that's not always a very common view of how the bombing it was wrong. It also relates to a lot of other, situations in the world and how you need to investigate and learn. So now I will be covering Investigate Part 2 and discovering why the U.S., why did they drop it after all? If all this is true and why, Japan was surrendering and stuff, why did they drop it after all?
EA Sports. It's in the game. It's a 60-minute drive for a 60-minute game. After all the miles we've traveled, we're almost there. After all the hours we've worked, one more can make us legends. After all that time, this is our time.
Like I said, we're going to be talking about how the U.S. or why the U.S. dropped the bomb after all. So, another big reason, implausible reason for the U.S. to drop the bombs on Japan was because of the Soviet Union. Before you get out of your chair and be like, what, how? I'm going to explain to you, okay? Like Gabe said, the bombings were unnecessary and wrong, and so why were they dropped anyway? Why were they necessary? Or not necessary, but why did the U.S. feel to drop them? So the conventional beliefs that the bombs were used solely for military purposes, saving American lives, shortening the war, and all that stuff. But that seems not to be the primary reason for this decision. Furthermore, Truman and his advisors viewed the bomb as an atomic monopoly to intimidate the Soviet Union. There is a connection with the bombs and the Russian expansion in Asia. Knowing that they could achieve surrender with little American lives surrender, even though they were already surrendering, but they could steer attention towards the growing power of Stalin in both East Asia and Europe. So they knew that the Soviet Union was growing, and that Stalin's power was growing as well. And so Truman inherited some anti-Soviet policies from Roosevelt. But his experience with the Russian expansion of power in Asia and Europe played a greater role in his decision of dropping the bombs than the pressure of following Roosevelt. So the growing power of the Soviet Union and Stalin's power was the main driver and just was the main thing that intimidated, Truman's decision in dropping these bombs. It was almost a sense of, you could call it flexing his muscles, because he was trying to intimidate and, like Gabe's doing, intimidate and show dominance and power. Like, Gabe always does, because he's just an alpha. Because he's Red Pill and Sigma and Alpha.
The man.
The man, yeah. The one and only. To connect this back to the topic, though, the topic of investigation and everything, the U.S. took responsibility for what they communicated to the Soviet Union. While that wasn't good, while that was horrible, and how it led them to bomb Japan. This is just, they communicated to the Soviet Union that they were trying to intimidate you, and that like the very most strong animal, the Wolverine, the mascot for Michigan, since Michigan's
exactly.
like the best, because since the Wolverine's like the most intimidating animal.
Exactly. If you saw it in the street, don't mess with it.
You're done.
You're done.
I know a guy, Dr. Malonis, he fought a Wolverine and he beat it, apparently, so he's like...
Yeah, I actually witnessed it.
Really? You were there?
Yes.
He was the Wolverine, I think, but...
Yes.
So, yeah, okay, so that's our investigate topic, just talking about how exploring, the truth about World War II, and, diving into the U.S.'s decision to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and why did they do it? And so, yeah, we're going to be moving on to the next topic.
Okay, I'm talking about number 5 on tyranny, which is called Remember Professional Ethics. And this topic explores the importance of being professional, remembering that being just and right is important to society and the U.S. and all countries. And it's important to maintain these ethics and morals because there are many scientists and engineers who helped create this atomic bomb that, was dropped in Nagasaki and Japan. And people would profit from making it, and they would, earn money, and they would get status. And as an example, they could have literally just refused to help with this bomb, because they knew the damage it could cause. They were very connected to this project. They knew where they were going to drop it. They knew that, okay, we're going to go to Japan, and this is going to kill millions of people. You know what I mean? And just because, maybe you'll make some money off it, maybe you'll have some short-term thing, you're ending people's lives, really. And they knew all this damage it could cause, and they just made it anyway. But they did try to do the petition where they had like 50 or so people who were like, hey, this is wrong. But I think they could have just not participated in creating it anyway, because frankly, this was not needed, the atomic bomb, for the end of the war. Japan was already ruined and all these things. And so, Jude, do you have anything else you can add to that?
No, but I'm going to read the next part of Remember Professional Ethics. Okay, so also to add to this decision of, the U.S. dropping the bombs and then making the bombs and everything, just all of this together was just terrible, violent, like we've been saying, obviously, but this is unprofessional in a sense. Snyder says in this topic, the description, that political leaders set negative examples. And the action of the U.S. bombing Japan is definitely a negative example shown to other countries. This type of action is what the U.S. has done a lot, even during present day. It's important to be professional and just in actions, and which that belief has not led the majority of decisions made back then when bombing Japan, and today when the U.S. and their decisions made today. Our last topic is learn from peers in other countries. This topic covers that countries should be keeping friendships abroad and learn from allies everywhere. Learn from everyone, not only allies, but be respectful to everyone. No country will find a solution by itself, and they should respect everyone, everything. So based on how the U.S. acted during World War II and bombing Japan when Japan was going to surrender is very important. This action should not have been performed, and the U.S. should have been more like peaceful and respectful countries, neutral countries, for example, like Sweden, Australia, who most likely would have not performed the violent bombings in Japan if they were in that position. I look at countries such as Sweden and just neutral things that are like neutral countries and people that would not, get their nose and not have to intimidate other countries and just would be respectable. But their current nonviolent nature would lead me to believe that they would not have carried out the cruel bombings in World War II. But, this applies as today, as well as the U.S. should not be funding other terrorist countries and should be more neutral and not, getting into a lot of stuff. But they should not be getting involved in, extremely involved in foreign occurrences. And the U.S. should learn from, allied countries. Like the topic says, learn from allied countries, be respectable to everyone and grow like relations, not try and fight and stuff like that. So an example of this is, Malaysia's government. They announced that they are imposing a ban on all Israeli-owned and flagged ships, as well as vessels headed to Israel and from docking at its ports. And so that shows that, they're cutting off relations for the better. They're not supporting that. They're cutting it off. And that's what the U.S. should be doing. They, instead of funding and supporting and all that stuff, they cut it off and they said no. And so that just kind of shows that, or reflects how the U.S., how their violent decisions, kind of led to demise in a lot of situations and led to a lot of lost lives. And so just a review before we let you go. We hope you enjoyed this as much as we did. We were very thrilled when making this.
Very thrilled.
But unfortunately, this is the last podcast we're gonna make before we rebrand. So it's a very emotional one.
This is an emotional moment.
Very emotional one. But just to review, not to get too emotional, just to review, we were connecting the 3 topics of investigate, remember professional ethics, and learn from peers in other countries to World War II, and how mainly just how the U.S. should not have bombed Japan, how that was wrong, how the Japan was already, surrendering, and why did they do it? Well, they did it because they wanted to intimidate Soviet Union, the power of the Soviet Union, the growing power of Stalin, and all that stuff. Okay, so that's investigate. That's learning about the decisions made. The most important one, which is the decision to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which now you know why they did it and why they should not have done it. Remembering professional ethics, reflecting on the unprofessionality. Is that even? I don't know if that's a word, but unprofessionality of that decision being performed, and then finally learning from peers in other countries that you should then act like someone more respectable and not perform those actions and prioritize life and not war and everything. So
exactly. Yeah.
So that's the Gabe and Jude podcast. We hope you're just super thrilled about this. We released some more episodes before we're gone. We released another episode about just talking about J.J. McCarthy and how he's probably going to go top 5.
Exactly. He's actually going to go top 5.
I think so.
He is going to.
The draft is this Thursday. The draft is this Thursday. Tune in, and you'll probably see.
Tom Brady.
Maybe. Anyways, so tune into the draft, and we'll see where J.J. McCarthy goes. We'll release a podcast episode right after that. Hope you have a good day, and I'm gonna go watch clips of Dr. Malone is fighting Wolverines.
Yes.